a safe harbor for tonight. If you have come here tonight with a body that feels heavy, with that particular kind of weariness that is not only today's tiredness, but the accumulation of many days, many nights in which sleep never fully arrived or arrived in pieces, interrupted by thoughts that spin without rest, like a wheel that cannot find stillness, I want you to know that this place was prepared for you, not by chance, not by accident. Something within you, perhaps that small, quiet voice that still remembers you deserve to rest, led you to these words. And that, in itself, is an act of courage you may not recognize in yourself, because you have spent so long being strong for everyone else that you have forgotten what it feels like when someone is strong for you. I want you to do something very simple before we begin. Just one thing. Close your eyes if you can, or let them rest half open, whichever feels right, and allow your body to sink a little deeper into wherever you are lying. You do not need to be perfectly comfortable. You do not need everything to be all right. You only need to be here, exactly as you are, with your pain, with your weariness, with that knot in your neck you have been carrying as though it were one more responsibility, with that tension in your shoulders that has grown so familiar you no longer notice it until someone points out that you have been holding them up near your ears. Let them fall, slowly, without rushing, as though an invisible weight had just been lifted from them. Tonight, you do not need to solve anything. You do not need to plan tomorrow. You do not need to go back over what you said or what you left unsaid. You do not need to be productive or useful or perfect. Tonight, your only task, the single mission that has been entrusted to you, is to rest. And to help you in that task, I've brought a story, an ancient story, from more than 1700 years ago, about a young man who devoted his entire life to one thing: relieving the suffering of others. A physician who never accepted a single coin for his services. A healer who placed his hands upon the sick and spoke the name of Jesus the way you would speak the name of the most powerful medicine ever created. His name was Panteleimon, which means the one who has mercy on all. And tonight, through his story, that mercy will enfold you like a warm blanket drawn gently over every part of your body that needs to be cared for. Perhaps you too have known that strange loneliness of those who suffer in silence, who smile through the day while something inside aches, something presses, something cries out for a rest that never seems to come. Perhaps your body has been speaking to you for weeks, for months, through small pains and persistent tensions, and that exhaustion that does not lift even after sleep. And you have kept going because that is what you have always done, because you do not know another way. Well, tonight someone is coming to sit beside your bed. Someone who knew human suffering from the inside, because he touched it with his own hands, because he looked it in the eyes of every sick person who came to him asking for help. Someone who never turned his back on the pain of others, and who, from the heaven where he now rests, still extends those compassionate hands toward those who need them. Welcome to Saints for Sleep. Welcome to this refuge of words, where story becomes prayer and prayer becomes rest. Tonight, we will walk together through the streets of an ancient city. We will come to know an extraordinary young man, and we will allow his life to teach us something we may have forgotten. That we were made to be healed, that pain does not have the final word, and that there exists a love so great, so generous, so absolutely free of charge, that it asks nothing in return for touching you and saying, "Rest now, I will take care of the rest." If this voice brings you comfort tonight, if these stories have become part of your nights, consider subscribing to Saints for Sleep, so that every evening, a new story of faith and hope will be waiting for you. It costs nothing, and it means everything. Now, let us begin. Take a deep breath. Release it slowly, as though with that breath you were letting go of a little of the weight you carry. And prepare yourself to travel very far from here, to an ancient land bathed by the sea, where many centuries ago a child was born who would change forever the way we understand the word heal. A city by the sea, Nicomedia. Imagine that you could travel through time, that you could cross the centuries the way you cross a long and silent bridge stretched over a river of years, and that when you reached the other side, you found yourself standing in a city that no longer exists, but that once. Imagine that this city is called Nicomedia, and that it sits at the head of a deep blue gulf, an arm of the Sea of Marmara that reaches into the land the way the sea itself might reach to embrace the shore. Slowly, gently, protectively. We are in what is today northwestern Turkey, in the region the ancients called Bithynia, and the year is approximately 275 of our era, when the vast Roman Empire stretches from the mists of Britain to the sands of North Africa, from the coasts of Hispania to the mountains of Mesopotamia. Nicomedia is no ordinary city. It is the jewel of the Roman East, the city that Emperor Diocletian has chosen as his principal residence, the capital from which he governs the eastern half of the empire. And so its streets are adorned with the magnificence that only absolute power can build. Palaces of white marble whose porticos rise on columns so thick that 3 men standing hand in hand could not encircle them. Public baths with mosaic floors where figures of dolphins and sea nymphs seem to swim beneath the feet of those who walk above them. A hippodrome where chariots raise clouds of golden dust beneath the afternoon sun, and temples dedicated to stone gods whose expressionless faces observe from above a humanity that searches for answers in the cold silence of marble. But it is not among those palaces that I want to take you tonight. It is not between marble columns or beneath gilded ceilings that our story begins. I want you to look beyond the splendor, to lower your gaze from the imperial terraces toward the neighborhoods that spread down the hillside, toward the narrower streets where the houses are made of adobe and wood, where the rooftops lean like tired shoulders bearing the weight of rain and years, where laundry strung between windows forms small colored ceilings above alleyways that smell of freshly baked bread and wood smoke. There, in those neighborhoods, is where most of the people of Nicomedia live. The craftsmen, the fishermen who each morning go down to the gulf with their many times mended nets, the mothers who carry water from the public fountains in clay vessels, the old men who sit in the shade of the walls to tell stories of times no one remembers anymore. And among all those people, nearly invisible in the crowd of those whose names appear in no history book, there are the sick, many sick. Because illness in the 3rd century has no mercy. There are no antibiotics, no hospitals as we know them today, no healthcare systems to cover the poor. If you fall ill and cannot afford a physician, your fate rests in the hands of the gods, and the gods of stone do not answer. If a fever consumes you, you lie on your straw mat while someone in your family tries to cool your forehead with a damp cloth. If a wound becomes infected, pain becomes your constant companion. A companion who does not leave by day or by night. If your eyes lose their sight, you walk carefully through a world gone dark, depending on the charity of those who can still see. Imagine those nights in Nicomedia. Imagine the silence that falls over the city when the last torches are extinguished and only the moonlight remains, reflecting on the waters of the Gulf. Imagine the sick in their homes, awake because pain will not let them sleep, staring at the ceiling while they wonder whether anyone, anywhere, can help them. Perhaps it is not so different from what you feel tonight, lying in your bed, in your room, in this age so distant and yet so alike in what matters most. A human being who needs relief, who needs someone to draw near and say, "I am here. I will not leave you alone with your pain." And in that city, in that time, in the middle of that sea of silent suffering, someone is about to be born who will change things. Someone who will bring to those narrow streets and humble homes something that no imperial palace can offer. Healing that is free, unconditional, given with open hands and a heart filled with a love that comes not from the pages of medical books, but from somewhere far higher, far deeper, from the heart of God Himself. That is the city where everything begins. That is the cradle of the healer of souls. And now that you can see its streets, its rooftops, its gulf gleaming beneath the stars, we are ready to meet the child who would one day become Saint Panteleimon, the child of two worlds. In one of the more comfortable houses in Nicomedia, not among the palaces of power, but not in the humblest neighborhoods either, but rather in that in-between space where those who have prospered through trade or social standing live without quite touching the imperial nobility. There lives a man named Eustorius. He is a respected Roman citizen, a devout pagan who honors the traditional gods of the empire, a man who has built his fortune through effort and who believes firmly in the order of the world as he knows it, the gods above, the emperor as their representative on earth, and every man in the place that destiny has assigned him. Eustorius has everything a man of his time could desire. He has a spacious house with an inner courtyard where a lemon tree grows, its shade perfuming the summer afternoons. He has servants, a prosperous business, and the respect of his neighbors. But above all else, he has his wife Eubula, and in her there lives a mystery he has never quite been able to understand. Because Eubula is a Christian. In an age when being Christian is dangerous, when faith in Christ must be practiced with the discretion of someone guarding a treasure that cannot be openly displayed, Eubula carries a light in her heart that needs no torch to shine. She prays in silence when night falls, murmurs psalms while she kneads the bread, and tells stories to her small son. Stories that speak not of Zeus or Apollo, but of a carpenter from Nazareth who healed the blind, who walked on water, who died on a cross, and rose on the third day to show that love is stronger than death. Her son is called Panteleimon, which means lion in all things, a child with curious eyes and restless hands who absorbs every word his mother speaks the way dry earth absorbs the rain. When Eubula speaks to him of Jesus, the child feels something he cannot put into words. A kind of warmth in his chest, a gentle certainty that these stories are different from all the others, that there is in them a truth the stories of the marble gods do not possess. Eubula teaches him to fold his hands and close his eyes and speak to God as though God were sitting right there beside him, at the edge of his bed, listening with infinite patience to every word of a child who is only just beginning to understand the world. But life has a cruelty that we cannot always make sense of, and Eubula falls ill. We do not know from what illness, because old accounts do not always record such things. But we know it was an illness that had no cure, that consumed her slowly the way a candle burns down without anyone being able to bring back the flame. And one day, while sunlight came through her bedroom window and the lemon tree in the courtyard let fall one of its white blossoms, as though it too understood what was happening, Eubula closed her eyes for the last time, and little Panteleimon stood beside her bed, the hands his mother had taught him to fold in prayer now hanging empty at his sides, not knowing to whom to address the prayers she had taught him, because the only person who had ever spoken to him of God had just gone to him. Perhaps you have felt that too. Perhaps you also lost someone who was your bridge to faith, someone whose voice was the only path you knew to God. And when that voice went silent, you felt the faith go with it, the way a perfume fades when the bottle that contained it is broken. Perhaps tonight, as you listen to these words, you remember that person, their face, their hands, the way they said the name of God with a familiarity that made you feel safe, and you feel a hollow that no other presence has quite managed to fill. Panteleimon felt exactly that. With his mother gone and his pagan father who neither understood nor shared that faith, the boy slowly drifted from Eubula's teachings. It was not a violent rejection, not a conscious decision. It was something subtler, slower, more like the way a river shifts from its original course when a large stone falls into its path. The water keeps flowing, but it no longer goes where it once went. Eustorius, with the best intentions in the world, enrolled his son in the finest pagan schools in Nicomedia. He wanted the boy to have a bright future, to build a name for himself in Roman society, to be free of the dangerous weight of a persecuted religion. And Panteleimon, as so many children do, who love their fathers and wish to please them, accepted. He studied with discipline. He excelled among his peers, and his mother's faith was left in a corner of his memory like a beautiful but increasingly distant recollection, like a lullaby that one stops singing when one believes one has grown too old to need it. But the grace of God has a patience that surpasses all human patience. The grace of God does not take offense when we turn away, does not close the door when we walk out, does not withdraw its hand when we let go. The grace of God waits, It waits the way mothers wait, with that quiet certainty that the child will return, that the road may be long and winding, but that it leads, in the end, always back home. And that grace, planted by the prayers of a Christian mother in the heart of her son, was there, sleeping but not dead, waiting for the precise moment to awaken. That is the story of the child Panteleimon, a son divided between two worlds, between the wealth of a pagan father and the faith of a Christian mother, between the brilliance of the empire and the quiet light of the gospel. A child who lost too soon the person he loved most, and who hardened a little in the way young trees harden when winter comes before its time. But beneath that bark, the sap was still running, and soon, very soon, it would find its way back to the surface. The art of healing without a soul. The years pass in Nicomedia the way they pass everywhere, with that mixture of slowness and speed that time has when you do not stop to watch it. And the boy Panteleimon has become a tall young man with an intelligent gaze and steady hands, who has discovered in medicine not merely a profession, but a calling that seems to have been born with him, as though his hands had been designed from the very beginning to touch and diagnose, to prepare ointments and poultices, to feel the pulse of the sick and know, with that intuition the finest physicians possess, what the body needs to recover its lost balance. His teacher is called Euphrosynus, one of the most renowned physicians in all the region of Bithynia, a man of science who has devoted his life to the study of the human body according to the teachings of Hippocrates and Galen, who knows the properties of every herb, who prepares remedies with a precision that borders on art. Under Euphrosynus's guidance, Panteleimon learns to recognize illnesses by their symptoms, to distinguish a mild fever from a mortal one, to treat wounds with wine and oil, to set fractures with wooden splints, to ease pain with extracts of poppy. He learns everything that the medicine of his time can teach, and he learns it with a facility that astonishes his master and that soon draws the attention of increasingly, because the reputation of a skilled physician travels quickly, especially in a city that serves as the emperor's residence. And before Panteleimon has reached his 25th year, his name has reached the ears of Maximian himself, the co-emperor who rules alongside Diocletian, a man accustomed to surrounding himself with the finest the empire can offer. Maximian summons him to court. He offers him a position as imperial physician, an honor that any young man in Nicomedia would have accepted with tears of gratitude, because it means assured wealth, the protection of power, access to the highest circles of Roman society. And Panteleimon accepts. Of course he accepts. He is young, ambitious in the innocent way of those who have not yet learned that success without purpose is a beautiful house built on empty foundations. And so the son of Eustorius walks the corridors of the imperial palace. He wears fine tunics, has access to the finest medical instruments, prepares remedies with ingredients brought from every corner of the empire. Myrrh from Arabia, silk from distant China for the most delicate dressings, herbs from Egypt, whose properties only a handful of men know. He treats the emperor's ailments, attends to the courtiers, receives praise and rewards. From the outside, his life appears complete. From the outside, he is the very image of success. But from the inside, something is missing. And that something has no name in any medical text, appears in no treatise of Galen, is cured by no herb and no ointment. It is a hollow that settles in the center of the chest and makes itself most noticeable precisely in the moments of greatest achievement. Like a shadow that grows darker the more brightly the light shines around it. Panteleimon heals bodies, yes, but he does not heal people. He treats symptoms without touching the suffering behind them. He relieves fevers without consoling the sick person who weeps in silence because they are afraid to die alone. He sets bones without mending the broken hearts of those who have lost someone they loved. Perhaps you know that feeling. Perhaps you have achieved things others admire, have built a life that looks solid and well-ordered from the outside, and yet at night, when everything goes quiet and no one is watching, you feel that hollow you do not know how to fill. You have tried filling it with work, with distraction, with keeping yourself so busy there is no time to think, but the hollow remains, patient, waiting for you to look at it directly. And what you find, when you finally dare to look, is that it is not a hollow of things, but a hollow of meaning. A gap that has exactly the shape of something you lost long ago. Something that had to do with faith, with connection to something greater than yourself, with that sense that life has a purpose, reaching beyond the expectations of others. That is precisely what Panteleimon felt in the corridors of the imperial palace. He was a brilliant physician who had forgotten the most important science of all, the science of salvation, as someone was about to tell him. A man who healed everything except what most needed healing, his own soul. A successful professional who had stopped listening to the voice of his mother murmuring prayers in the half-light of his childhood. But God, who never abandons those who belong to him even when they believe they have abandoned him, was preparing something. In the shadows of Nicomedia, hidden in a place the imperial power did not know, an elderly priest was about to speak the exact words that Panteleimon needed to hear. Words that would reach his heart, the way the first rain reaches a field that has been dry for too long. Gently at first, barely a few drops, but then with enough force to bring forth what had seemed dead forever. The hidden voice. The priest, Hermolaus. To understand what is about to happen in the life of Panteleimon, we must pause a moment and look into the shadows of Nicomedia, into the corners that the torches of the imperial palace cannot reach, into the cellars and hidden rooms where the Christian faith survives like an ember that refuses to go out no matter how strongly the wind blows. We are in the first years of the 4th century, and the Roman Empire has unleashed upon Christians the most brutal persecution in all its history. The Emperor Diocletian, who keeps his residence here in Nicomedia, has decided that Christianity is a threat to the unity of the empire, and has issued edicts ordering the destruction of churches, the burning of the Holy Scriptures, the stripping of civil rights from Christians, and their compulsion to offer sacrifice to the pagan gods under penalty of torture and death. In the year 303, something terrible has taken place in this city. The great Christian church of Nicomedia, which was large and beautiful and stood in a visible place, was razed to its foundations by imperial order. And according to the ancient accounts, as many as 20,000 Christians were burned alive in a single act of violence so monstrous that the memory of the city was marked forever with the scar of those flames. But among the ashes, 3 men survived, 3 priests whose names history has preserved the way a seed is preserved inside scorched earth: Hermolaus, Hermippus, and Hermocrates. We do not know exactly how they escaped. Perhaps Providence guided them through dark alleyways while the fire consumed everything around them. Perhaps someone hid them at the risk of their own life. What we know is that they found refuge in a quiet house in Nicomedia, an unremarkable place, a nameless door on a forgotten street where the emperor's soldiers would not think to search. And there, in that imposed half-darkness, Hermolaus remained a priest. He continued to pray. He continued to celebrate the mysteries of the faith for the few Christians who dared to visit him, slipping through the shadows of the night. Hermolaus was an elderly man, his hair white and his hands weathered by years of service. But his eyes held the clarity of someone who has witnessed too much suffering to waste time on things that do not matter. He had survived the destruction of his church, the death of thousands of his brothers and sisters in faith, the relentless persecution that turned every day into a test of endurance. And yet he was not bitter. He was not broken. He was waiting, because Hermolaus held a deep conviction, born of that faith which fire cannot burn, that God had kept him alive for a reason, and that reason was about to reveal itself. From the window of his hiding place, Hermolaus could observe the street without being seen, and it was in this way that he began to notice a young man who passed frequently along that route, a well-dressed young man of distinguished bearing, who walked with the confidence of someone who has a place in the world, but with the eyes of someone who is searching for something not yet found. It was Panteleimon, most likely passing through that street on his way to visit a patient or returning from the imperial palace. Hermolaus watched him once, twice, many times, with the patience of the elderly who know how to read souls through gestures, and something in the young physician caught his attention. Perhaps it was the way he sometimes stopped to look at the sick who begged on the street corners, with an expression that was not indifference, but contained pain, as though he wanted to do something but did not know what. Perhaps it was something more subtle, something only the eyes of faith can perceive, the invisible mark of a soul that had been baptized by a Christian mother's love, and that, though it had strayed from the path, still carried within it the trace of that first grace. One day, Hermolaus made a decision. He opened the door of his hiding place, stepped into the street with the caution of one who knows that being discovered means death, and called out to the young physician. We do not know the exact words he used to draw his attention, but we know that Panteleimon, instead of walking on, instead of ignoring that unknown old man beckoning from a darkened doorway, stopped. Something stopped him. Something stronger than hurry, stronger than prudence, stronger than the fear of becoming involved with someone who was clearly hiding from the imperial power. Perhaps it was his mother's voice, resonating from the depths of his memory like a distant bell that suddenly rings clear. Perhaps it was the grace of God, which had been waiting for this precise moment, this crossroads between a lost young man and an old man who knew the way back home. Panteleimon entered the house of Hermolaus, and there, in the half-light of that refuge that smelled of candle wax and shared bread, the elderly priest looked him in the eyes and spoke to him words that Saint Alphonsus Maria de Liguori would record centuries later in his writings. My friend, you have studied medicine with great success, and the emperor himself has named you his physician. But tell me, what good are all your skills in this art if you remain ignorant of the science of salvation? The science of salvation. Those 4 words fell upon Panteleimon the way the first rain falls upon a desert, with a gentle force, a power that does not destroy but penetrates, that soaks through, that reaches the deepest and driest roots and says to them, "It is time to bloom." The young physician fell silent, and in that silence, something stirred within him. Something that had been sleeping for years, something that held his mother's voice and the shape of a childhood prayer spoken with folded hands at the edge of a small bed. From that day forward, Panteleimon returned again and again to the house of Hermolaus. Each visit was another step toward the faith he had left behind. Each conversation with the old priest was like a new layer of fertile soil settling over the seed that Eubula had planted so many years before. Hermolaus did not pressure him. He did not force him. He did not frighten him with warnings of divine punishment. He simply spoke of Christ with the ease of someone speaking of a person he knows personally. Not a theological idea, but a real and living presence, close and near. He spoke of a God who heals, who consoles, who draws near to the suffering, who does not watch from above with indifference, but who comes down, who kneels beside the sick, and who says, "I am with you." And Panteleimon listened. And with each word, the bark that time and distance had formed around his heart grew a little more cracked. Slowly, the way ice cracks when spring arrives, not with a blow, but with the persistent warmth of a sun that does not give up. The child, the viper, and the first prayer. There are moments in life that function like hinges, like those exact points where everything you have been until then meets everything you're about to become, and the whole world seems to pause for an instant so that you may choose. For Panteleimon, that moment arrived on a street in Nicomedia, on an ordinary afternoon that was about to stop being ordinary and become the most important afternoon of his existence. He was walking, perhaps returning from one of his secret visits to Hermolaus, perhaps simply crossing the city to attend to a patient, when his eyes came upon a scene that stopped him in his tracks. On the ground, stretched across the dusty stones of the road, lay a child, a small child, motionless, with lips gone pale and eyes closed, and beside him, still coiled in the position of its strike, a viper whose venom had been faster than the small boy's bare feet. The child was dead. The venom had done its work with the cruel efficiency of a nature that makes no distinction between the innocent and the guilty, between those who deserve to live and those who do not. Because death makes no such distinctions. It simply arrives. Panteleimon knelt beside the child's body. As a physician, he knew there was nothing to be done. He understood poisons, understood their effects, knew how to recognize death when he saw it. There was no herb, no ointment that could reverse what the viper's venom had accomplished. Had Panteleimon been only a physician, he would have risen to his feet, brushed the dust from his knees, and continued on his way with the resigned sadness of one who sees death every day and has learned to live alongside it. But Panteleimon was no longer only a physician. The conversations with Hermolaus had opened a crack in his world, and through that crack filtered a possibility that medicine did not contemplate. A possibility his mother had whispered to him as a child, and that now, kneeling beside the lifeless body of that small boy, returned to him with a clarity that shook him to his core. Christ heals. Christ raises the dead. Christ has power over death. And so Panteleimon did something he had not done in many years. He closed his eyes, he folded his hands, and he prayed. Not with the elegant formulas of Roman rhetoricians, not with the incantations of pagan priests, but with the bare simplicity of a man speaking to God from the depths of his need. He asked Jesus Christ, the God of his mother, the God of whom Hermolaus spoke each day with eyes filled with a light no persecution could extinguish, to give life back to that child. And he added something more, a condition that reveals the radical honesty of his heart. If this child returns to life, I will know that you are the true God, and I will follow you forever. What happened next lies beyond the categories of medicine and enters the territory that only faith can explain. The child opened his eye, not suddenly, not with a dramatic start, but slowly. The way someone wakes from a very deep sleep, the way someone returns from a faraway place and needs a moment to recognize where they are. Color returned to his lips. His chest rose and fell with the slow, steady rhythm of breath. And the viper lying beside him twisted and died, as though the same power that had given life back to the child had withdrawn it from the creature that had taken it. Panteleimon remained on his knees in the dust of that street, the living child in his arms, and wept. Not from sorrow, but from that overwhelming emotion that floods us when something we had stopped expecting suddenly happens. When a door we believed closed forever swings wide open, and behind it is everything we had lost, everything we had stopped searching for, everything our mother had promised us when we were small, and that the world had convinced us was not real. Perhaps you have had a moment like that. Perhaps not as spectacular, perhaps not as visible, but just as transforming. A moment when something happened that you could not explain with logic. A moment when you felt a presence, an intervention, a coincidence too perfect to be coincidence, and something within you knew, with a certainty that needed no proof, that God was there, that He had always been there, that He had never left, even when you stopped looking for Him. Perhaps tonight, as you listen to the story of a child who returned to life on a dusty street in Nicomedia, something also returns to life within you. Something small, perhaps. A seed of faith you thought lost. A memory of prayer. A hope you had filed away as impossible. Panteleimon ran to the house of Hermolaus. He told him what had happened, and the elderly priest, who had survived destruction and death and persecution, smiled with the serene smile of one who knows the waiting is over, that the seed has germinated, that the prodigal son has come home. And there, in that refuge hidden in the shadows of a hostile city, the priest Hermolaus poured water over Panteleimon head and baptized him with a new name, Panteleimon, which means the one who has mercy on all, the all-merciful. He would no longer be Panteleimon, the lion. He would be Panteleimon, the mercy. He would no longer be only a physician of the body. He would be a healer of the soul. And with that new name, with that new water running across his forehead like a promise of everything yet to come, Panteleimon felt the hands of his mother rest gently upon his shoulders, and heard the voice of Eubula, from somewhere where pain no longer exists, say softly, "My son, welcome home. The hands that never charged, the physician of the poor." I want you to pause here for a moment in this part of the story, because what is about to happen is perhaps the most beautiful of everything we will tell tonight. And I want you to receive it not only with your mind, but with your body, with your skin, with every part of you that needs to hear what Panteleimon is about to do. Shortly after his baptism, Eustoreus, Panteleimon's father, fell ill, And the young physician, who now carried in his hands not only the science of Euphrosinus, but the grace of the living God, cared for his father through his illness. And in those days of closeness and vulnerability, he spoke to him of Christ. He spoke the way Hermolaus had spoken to him, without pressure, without urgency, with the ease of someone sharing something they love. And when a blind man came before them asking for help, Panteleimon placed his hands over those sightless eyes and pronounced the name of Jesus. And the eyes opened, and light entered them for the first time in years. And Eustorius, who was watching, saw in that instant more than his own eyes had seen in an entire lifetime. He saw the truth. He asked for baptism, and he died not long after as a Christian, at peace, with the certainty that his wife Eubula was waiting for him on the other side of that door we call death, but which, for those who believe, is only a threshold into true life. Panteleimon inherited his father's fortune, and here is where the story takes a turn that defies every logic of the ancient world and the modern one. Because what Panteleimon did with that fortune was not what any young heir in Nicomedia would have done. He did not buy a larger house. He did not invest in business. He did not secure his future or his comfort. What he did was open his hands and let go of everything he had. He freed each of his father's slaves, giving them not only their liberty, but the means to begin a new life. He distributed his money among the poor of the city, among the widows who had no one to sustain them, among the orphans who slept in doorways, among the elderly who had been forgotten by everyone. He stripped himself of all he possessed, the way a tree sheds its leaves in autumn, not in sorrow, but in obedience to a deeper rhythm, a higher law than that of the market and accumulation. And then, free of all possession, rich only in compassion, Panteleimon began to do what he had been born to do. He went out into the streets of Nicomedia and began to heal, but not as he had healed before, not as the imperial court physician who attended to the powerful for a generous salary. Now he healed the way Christ had healed, without accepting a single coin, without asking anything in return, without making distinctions between rich and poor, between Roman citizens and foreigners, between free persons and slaves. His hands were the same hands that had learned to examine and diagnose in the school of Euphrosinus. But now, those hands were filled with something no school of medicine could ever teach: absolute charity, love without conditions, a generosity that gives everything and keeps nothing for itself. Imagine the scenes. Imagine a morning in Nicomedia, the sun barely cresting the hills to the east, and Panteleimon walking through the poor neighborhoods with a satchel of remedies over his shoulder. He stops at the door of a house where a mother is weeping because her son has had a fever for 3 days and she cannot pay any physician. Panteleimon enters, kneels beside the child, touches his forehead with one hand and takes the mother's hand with the other, and before applying any remedy, he prays. He speaks the name of Jesus over that fever, and his fingers prepare a compound of herbs that he applies with the delicacy of one who knows he is touching something sacred. Because every human body is sacred, every body is a temple of the Spirit, and to treat the sick is to tend to God himself, disguised as vulnerability. Imagine another scene. The prisons of Nicomedia are full of Christians, men and women in chains, wounded by the lashes of interrogation. Their wrists raw from the chafing of iron shackle. The guards look the other way when the young physician approaches, because Panteleimon still carries the protection of his former position at court, and no one quite dares to bar his way. He enters the dark cells where the smell of blood and suffering mingles with something subtler, something only those who have been there can recognize: the scent of faith being tested, the inexplicable fragrance of a hope that persists where it should not persist. And Panteleimon washes the wounds of the prisoners, bandages their wrists, applies balm to their broken backs, and as he does so, he speaks to them. He tells them they are not alone. He tells them that Christ too was a prisoner, that Christ too was wounded, that Christ too bled, and that in every drop of his blood there is a promise of victory over all the pain in the world. Imagine that someone did that for you tonight. Imagine that someone came to your bed, sat beside you without hurry, without agenda, without glancing at the time, and placed their hands on your tired body, on your tense shoulders, on your stiff neck, on your back that carries more than it should, on your chest, where sometimes you feel that weight which shows up in no scan, no X-ray, but which is as real as any broken bone. Imagine that those hands were the hands of Panteleimon, the hands of the physician who never charged, the hands that had touched hundreds of sick people with the same tenderness a mother uses to touch her child, the hands that healed because before healing they had prayed, because before touching they had loved. Imagine that those hands were saying to you, without words, what words cannot always manage to say. You do not have to pay for this. You do not have to deserve it. You do not have to be perfect or strong or brave. You only have to be here and let love do what love knows how to do. The people of Nicomedia began to leave the other physicians, not out of whim, not out of fashion, but because they had discovered something that transformed entirely the experience of being healed, being treated by someone who sees in you not a client but a brother, who does not calculate what he can charge you but what he can give you, who heals not by trade but by love. The reputation of Panteleimon spread through the city the way the warmth of fresh bread spreads through the streets of a neighborhood, from house to house, from mouth to mouth, from heart to heart. And with each sick person healed, with each blind person who recovered their sight, with each person who rose from their paralysis and walked again, the name of Jesus rang a little louder in the streets of a city the emperor had wanted to purge of Christians. That was Panteleimon, a man who had turned his entire life into an act of generosity so radical that the empire itself would come to see him as a threat. Because there is nothing more dangerous to a system built on power than a man who gives without asking, who heals without charging, who loves without conditions. There is nothing more subversive than absolute gratuity in a world that measures everything, prices everything, turns everything into a transaction. And that gratuity, that immense generosity, is what reaches you tonight, crossing the centuries, traveling through time and space to rest upon your body like a balm that costs nothing, that demands nothing, that is simply given. The eyes of the blind man and the heart of a father. Of all the miracles that Panteleimon performed in the streets of Nicomedia, there is one that shines with a particular light, not because it is the most spectacular, but because it is the most intimate, the most familiar, the one that connects the healing of the body to the healing of the soul in a way so beautiful that in telling it one feels not merely speaking of a blind man from the 3rd century, but of all of us, of all the blindnesses. A blind man came to Panteleimon. We do not know his name because history often forgets the names of those who suffer most. But we know that he had lost his sight, and that to lose one's sight in the ancient world was to lose nearly everything: independence, the ability to work, the possibility of moving through the world without depending on the kindness of others. A blind man in Nicomedia was a man reduced to begging, to sitting on a corner with his hand outstretched, to hearing life pass without being able to see it, to imagining the faces of the people who spoke to him without ever being able to know if his imagination came anywhere close to the truth. This man came to Panteleimon because the reputation of the physician who charged nothing had reached his ears, which were now his primary window to the world. And Panteleimon received him the way he received everyone, without first asking whether he could pay, without evaluating whether the case was medically interesting enough, without calculating how long it would take or what he might gain. He received him with open hands and a ready heart, and he looked into the eyes that could not see him and felt that deep compassion which is not pity but recognition, that emotion that arises when you look at another human being and see in their suffering a reflection of your own, a kinship that transcends circumstance. And then, in the presence of his father Eustorius, who was not yet a Christian, who still looked at the world through the eyes of paganism and imperial reason, Panteleimon placed his hands over the blind man's closed eyes and spoke the name of Jesus Christ. He used no medicines, he applied no ointments. He drew on none of the treatments he had learned in the school of Euphrosyne. He used only the name, because he had learned from Hermolaus that this name contains all the power of the God who created eyes and light and the capacity to see, and that if that God wishes to open eyes that illness has closed, no force in the universe can prevent it. The blind man's eyes opened, and the first thing they saw, the first thing those pupils received after their long night of darkness, was the face of Panteleimon looking at him with a smile that held something of the smile of Christ himself. That smile which says, "Your sins are forgiven, and rise and walk, and do not be afraid all at once." The blind man blinked, as though needing to confirm that what was happening was real, that the light flooding his eyes was not a dream or a vision, but the true world, the world he had stopped seeing, and that was now being given back to him as an undeserved gift, as an absolutely free grace. But the true miracle of this scene is not in the eyes of the blind man. It is in the eyes of Eustoria. Because the father of Panteleimon, who had spent his entire life worshipping stone gods that had never lifted a finger for anyone, that had never cured a fever or opened anyone's eyes or consoled a broken heart, watched what had just happened, and something inside him gave way. Not a destructive collapse, but a liberating one. The way a wall collapses when it has been keeping you from seeing the landscape behind it. Eustoria saw the truth. He saw it with a clarity that no theological argument could ever have given him, because arguments persuade the mind, but miracles persuade the heart, and it was his heart that needed to be persuaded. In that moment, Eustorius understood what his wife Eubula had been trying to tell him for years. He understood why she prayed in the half-light, why she murmured psalms while kneading the bread, why she spoke to their son of a carpenter from Nazareth with more reverence than pagans reserved for all their gods combined. Eubula had seen what he had just seen. Eubula had always known, and now, at last, through the hands of his own son and the newly opened eyes of a stranger, Eustorius knew it too. He asked for baptism. He and the blind man were baptized together. The father who had finally found faith and the man who had finally found sight, united by water and by the name of Jesus that had worked in both of them a different but equally profound miracle. In one, it had opened the eyes of the body. In the other, the eyes of the soul. Sometimes the healing we need is not our own. Sometimes what hurts us most is not our own suffering, but the suffering of someone we love. Sometimes we spend whole nights awake, not because of our own anguish, but because of the anguish of a child, a parent, a sibling, someone whose pain we feel as deeply as if it were our own. And sometimes, as it happened with Eustorius, the answer does not come directly to us but through another, through a stranger whose healing also heals us, whose liberation also frees us, whose faith gives us back our own. Eustorius died not long after as a Christian at peace, and Panteleimon was left alone in the world, but more accompanied than ever, because he now knew that his mother and his father were waiting for him in the same place, reunited at last in the faith that Eubula had planted, and that God, with the infinite patience of a gardener who knows how to wait, had brought to bloom, envy as illness and the emperor's judgment. There is one illness that Panteleimon was never able to cure, not because he lacked the power, but because those who suffered from it had no wish to be healed. It is an illness that produces no fever, no rash, no visible pain, but that corrodes the soul with a destructive efficiency more thorough than any poison: envy. And it was envy that finally brought the storm down upon the head of the most beloved physician in Nicomedia. The other physicians of the city had been watching for months with growing alarm as their waiting rooms emptied. The patients who had once come to them paying generous sums were leaving, one by one, to seek out the young Christian physician who healed without charging. It did not matter that those physicians had years of experience, prestigious titles, the approval of the authorities. They could not compete with someone who offered what they offered but free of charge, and who added something their treatments did not include. A compassion so genuine that the sick left his hands feeling not only healed, but loved, not only treated but seen, not only attended to, but held by something greater than mere medical science. Envy is like that. It cannot bear the goodness of another. It cannot tolerate someone shining with a light that is not its own. It cannot accept that there exists in the world a generosity so great that it makes one's own smallness visible by comparison. And the physicians of Nicomedia, consumed by that illness of the soul, which they themselves did not know how to diagnose, did what the envious have always done throughout history. They denounced Panteleimon to the power. They went to Emperor Maximian and told him that the young physician was a Christian, that he healed imprisoned Christians, that he invoked the name of a foreign god over his patients, that he was converting the population through what they called his supposed miracles. Maximian did not want to lose Panteleimon. He was a pragmatic emperor, and he knew that a physician of such ability was a valuable resource. And so he tried persuasion first. He summoned the young man to his presence, regarded him with that mixture of authority and condescension that the powerful wear when they believe they can purchase any will, and told him, in essence, forget this nonsense. Offer a sacrifice to the gods of the empire, demonstrate your loyalty, and everything can continue as before. You will remain my physician. You will keep my protection. All you have to do is deny this Christ they speak of. And here is where the story of Panteleimon ceases to be the story of a physician and becomes the story of a martyr. Because Panteleimon, standing before the emperor of the known world, before the man who with a single gesture could grant him life or death, chose the truth. He did not hesitate. He did not negotiate. He did not seek a middle ground that might allow him to save both his faith and his life. He openly confessed that he was a Christian. He spoke the name of Christ aloud in the throne room, before the courtiers who watched him in horror, and before the envious physicians who watched him with cruel satisfaction. And then, as though wishing to make absolutely clear that he was not speaking of an empty superstition, but of a real power, more real than all the power of the Roman Empire, Panteleimon looked at a paralyzed man who was present in the hall, a man who had been unable to move his legs for years, and took him by the hand and spoke the same words that Peter had once spoken to the paralytic at the beautiful gate of the temple in Jerusalem. In the name of Jesus Christ, rise and walk. And he walked. There, before the emperor, before the courtiers, before the physicians who could explain what they were seeing with none of their theories, none of their treatises, none of the tools of their science. A man who had been bedridden for years walked through the throne room as though he had never stopped. And each step he took was a proclamation more eloquent than any sermon. Christ is real. Christ heals. Christ has power over illness and over death and over everything that keeps us prostrate. Maximian, enraged, not by the miracle itself, but by what the miracle meant, because an emperor who acknowledges a power greater than his own ceases to be an emperor, ordered the paralyzed man who was glorifying Christ to be executed. They killed him there and then, that man who had just recovered the use of his legs, as though by destroying the evidence they might destroy the truth. And then Maximian turned to Panteleimon and pronounced the sentence the young physician had already expected, which he had accepted in his heart from the moment he had decided to confess his faith. He would be tortured until he denied Christ, and if he did not deny him, he would be put to death. Panteleimon heard the sentence with the serenity of one who has placed his life in hands greater than any emperor's. He did not plead. He did not weep. He did not recant. He simply looked at Maximian with the eyes that had given sight back to the blind, with the hands that had raised the paralyzed from the ground. And in his gaze there was something the emperor could not bear, something that unsettled him more than any military threat or political conspiracy. There was compassion. Panteleimon looked at his executioner with compassion, the way a physician looks at a patient who does not know he is ill, the way someone who can see looks at someone who believes he can see but is, in truth, blind. The body they could not destroy. What followed is one of the most extraordinary accounts of martyrdom in all of Christian tradition. A succession of ordeals that seem designed not to destroy Panteleimon, but to demonstrate again and again that the body of a man consecrated to the healing of others rests under a protection that no earthly power can penetrate. First, they suspended him from a tree and tore at his flesh with iron hooks, those curved instruments that Roman torturers used to strip away ribbons of skin and muscle. a torment designed so that the pain would become so unbearable that the victim would say anything, anything at all, just to make it stop. But Panteleimon did not say what they wanted him to say. He did not deny Christ. Instead of screams, prayers rose from his lips, and the executioners, bewildered, noticed that the wounds they inflicted seemed not to cause him the suffering they had expected, as though an invisible hand interposed itself between the iron and the flesh, softening each blow, easing each tear. Then they lit torches and pressed them against his body, seeking in fire what the hooks had failed to accomplish. But the flames, according to the accounts left by those who witnessed it, were extinguished upon touching his skin, as though the fire itself recognized that it had no jurisdiction over this body, as though the flames somehow knew what the torturers did not, that there is a fire stronger than fire, and that this fire burns in the heart of those who love God without conditions. And it was then, the tradition tells us, that Christ appeared to Panteleimon in the form of Hermolaus, his spiritual father, to strengthen him and remind him that he was not alone, that he had never been alone, and that even there, in the place of torment, the presence of God was more real than the pain. They prepared then a cauldron of molten lead, liquid lead, boiling, capable of destroying flesh in seconds. They cast Panteleimon into that cauldron the way one casts a stone into a lake, expecting the lead to accomplish in an instant what the hooks and the fire had not managed in hours. But when the figure of Christ descended into the cauldron beside him, the fire that kept the lead molten was extinguished, and the burning metal cooled, and Panteleimon stepped out of that cauldron the way children step out of a bath, whole, without a single burn, his skin as unmarked as though the molten lead had been nothing more than warm water. They bound him to an enormous stone and cast him into the sea, expecting the weight to pull him down into the depths of the Gulf of Nicomedia. But the stone floated. It floated as though it were made of wood, as though the laws of physics had decided to make an exception for the man who had so many times defied the laws of medicine in the name of a higher power. And Panteleimon remained upon the waters, serene, praying, while the soldiers who had thrown him in watched from the shore with a mingling of terror and wonder that was beginning to look dangerously like faith. They brought him to the circus and threw him to the wild beasts, lions, savage creatures that had been starved so that hunger would make them fiercer, more relentless, more efficient as instruments of execution. The cages were opened. The beasts came running toward Panteleimon. And then something happened that left the crowd filling the stands of the circus without words. The lions, instead of attacking, approached the saint and lay down at his feet. They jostled one another, not to devour him, but to be touched by his hands, as though those hands that had healed so many sick people emanated something that even animals could perceive: a fragrance of goodness, a resonance of peace, a presence of the sacred that made any act of violence impossible. And the spectators, seeing this, began to cry out from the stands, "Great is the God of the Christians." Maximian, enraged at seeing that every failed torment produced more conversions instead of more fear, ordered his soldiers to execute with the sword anyone who glorified the name of Christ in the circus. And then he ordered that Panteleimon be beheaded once and for all. They led him outside the city. They bound him to an olive tree, a tree of peace, a tree whose branches have symbolized since time immemorial reconciliation and hope. And when the executioner raised his sword and brought it down upon the neck of the saint, the blade bent like warm wax without inflicting the slightest wound. The soldiers drew back, frightened. They fell to their knees. They asked for forgiveness. They refused to continue. And it was Panteleimon who consoled them. It was the condemned man who consoled his executioners. He told them to carry out the emperor's order, because otherwise they would have no part with him in the life to come. He told them not to be afraid. He told them that what was about to happen was not an ending, but a beginning. The soldiers, weeping, took their leave of him with a kiss, the way a child takes leave of a father when he knows he will not see him again in this world, but trusts he will see him in the next. Panteleimon prayed one final time, and while he prayed, a voice was heard from the heavens, a voice that called him by his name, Panteleimon, the all-merciful, and summoned him to the kingdom. Those present heard it. The soldiers heard it. And when the prayer ended, the sword that had bent before found its edge again, and the head of the healer of souls was separated from his body. But death did not have the final word, because in the very instant that Panteleimon gave up his life, the olive tree to which he had been bound covered itself with fruit, an olive tree that blooms and bears fruit in a single moment, as though the life that had just departed from that body had passed into the tree, as though the earth itself wished to say what human words could not express, that those who give their lives for love do not die, that those who heal others are healed forever, that the death of the just is the seed of eternal life. The body of Panteleimon was cast into a fire, but the flames did not touch him, as they had not touched him before. Christians recovered his remains and buried them with reverence. His servants Laurentius, Bassus and Provius, who had witnessed everything, who had seen each torment and each miracle and had heard the voice from the heavens, sat down to write all they had seen, so that the memory of Panteleimon would not be lost, so that future generations would know that once there had lived a man who loved so much that not even death could extinguish his love. It was the year 305 of our era. Panteleimon was barely 30 years old. He had lived briefly and loved greatly, and his story, like the olive tree that bloomed at his death, had only just begun. The blood that stays alive. And here the story could have ended, the way so many stories of martyrs end, with a heroic death and the pious remembrance of those left behind. But the story of Panteleimon does not end with his death, because there is something in this saint that resists remaining in the past, something that insists on crossing the centuries and reaching us with the freshness of what is alive, of what still beats, of what has never stopped healing. And to speak of that, I must take you to another place and another time. I need you to leave behind the streets of Nicomedia and travel with me to the coast of Italy, to a small town called Ravello, perched on the cliffs of the Amalfi coast like an eagle's nest suspended between sky and sea. Ravello is one of those places that seems to exist outside of time, with its stone alleyways that rise and fall between houses draped in bougainvillea, with its terraces overlooking a Mediterranean so blue it seems painted by the hand of God, with its ancient cathedral where the centuries have settled layer upon layer, like the pages of a book no one ever finishes reading. In that cathedral in Ravello, an extraordinary relic is kept, a glass vial containing a small quantity of the blood of Saint Panteleimon. Blood that is more than 1700 years old. Blood that, according to every law of biology and chemistry, should have decomposed centuries ago, should be dust, should be nothing. But each year, on the 27th of July, the feast day of Saint Panteleimon in the liturgical calendar, that dry blood, that dark solidified mass that remains motionless for the other 364 days of the year, begins to change. It softens, it liquefies, it recovers a richer, more vivid color, and begins to move inside the vial as though it had just been shed, as though the 1700 years separating it from the body it came from were no more than an instant, as though the blood of Panteleimon refused to accept that its owner is dead. And what is most astonishing is that this does not happen only in Ravello. Thousands of miles away, in Madrid, in the royal monastery of the Incarnation, where the Augustinian Recollect nuns guard another vial with the blood of the same saint, the same phenomenon occurs at the same hour of the same day. 2 vials, 2 countries, 2 reliquaries separated by mountains and seas, and yet the blood in both liquefies simultaneously, as though an invisible signal connected them, as though the saint were saying from heaven, "I am still here. I am still alive. I am still healing." Science has no explanation for this phenomenon. Studies have been conducted, hypotheses proposed, natural causes sought that might account for why an organic substance more than 17 centuries old behaves in this way. And no explanation has proved satisfying. It is not temperature, because the phenomenon occurs regardless of climatic conditions. It is not atmospheric pressure. because it happens simultaneously in two places with different atmospheric conditions. It is not a trick, because the vials are sealed and watched and have been examined by experts from various disciplines. What remains, when all natural explanations have been set aside, is mystery. And mystery, for the eyes of faith, has a name: miracle. Saint Alphonsus Maria de Liguori, the great doctor of the Church who lived in the 18th century, wrote about this relic with the authority of one who had seen it with his own eyes, noting that in Ravello, the blood kept in a vial would liquefy each year, sometimes appearing intermingled with what resembled milk, a detail evoking an ancient tradition that when Panteleimon was beheaded, from his neck flowed not only blood but also milk, as though his body, even in the moment of death, wished to keep nourishing, keep feeding, keep giving life. But the presence of Panteleimon is not limited to the vials of miraculous blood. His venerable head is preserved in the Russian monastery of Saint Panteleimon on Mount Athos in Greece, that sacred peninsula where Orthodox monks have lived for centuries in continuous prayer, removed from the world but deeply connected to it through that invisible thread that is the intercession of the saints. Fragments of his relics are scattered across the Christian world. In the Cathedral of Lyon, in the Abbey of Saint-Denis, in Paris, in Porto, Portugal, where relics brought by Armenian refugees after the fall of Constantinople in the 15th century continue to be venerated in the city's cathedral. And his name, the name of Panteleimon, the All-Merciful, resounds each time a priest administers the sacrament of the anointing of the sick, that sacred ceremony in which the Church places blessed oil upon the body of one who suffers and asks God, through the intercession of his saints, to grant the healing of both body and soul. Each time a priest anoints the sick and pronounces the prayers of healing, the name of Panteleimon is present, invoked, active, as though the holy physician of Nicomedia were extending his hands across the centuries to rest them upon every anointed body, every fevered forehead, every chest that struggles to breathe. Think of that tonight as you feel your body sinking softly into the mattress, as you notice how your eyelids grow heavier with each word you hear. Think of a saint who lived more than 1700 years ago, whose blood still moves, still flows, still refuses to die. Think that that blood is a promise made flesh, a visible guarantee that healing has no expiration date, that the love Panteleimon poured out over the sick of Nicomedia was not exhausted at his death, but keeps flowing, like an underground river that feeds wells we do not even know exist. Think that if that blood remains alive after so many centuries, then perhaps the compassion that shed it is also still alive. Perhaps the hands of Panteleimon still reach toward those who suffer. Perhaps his intercession still reaches the sick, the weary, those who cannot sleep, those who feel the body heavy and the soul restless. Perhaps tonight, as the story of the healer of souls enfolds you like a mantle, something of that living blood, something of that inexhaustible mercy, is finding its way to you, drop by drop, like an invisible balm settling over each pain, each tension, each wound you carry in your body and in your heart. Because the saints do not entirely die. The saints leave a trail of grace that time cannot erase, a luminous wake that crosses the centuries, the way the light of a star that exploded millennia ago still illuminates the nights of those who look up. And Panteleimon, the physician who never charged, the healer who gave everything he had, the martyr who forgave his executioners, still shines, still heals, still extends his merciful hands toward all those who, like those sick people of Nicomedia, need someone to draw near and say, "Do not be afraid, I am here, and it will cost you nothing." The Eastern Church venerates him as the great martyr and healer, and in his Troparion, that liturgical hymn sung on his feast day, he is asked to beseech the merciful God to grant to our souls the remission of our transgression. Notice what the hymn asks for. Not only the healing of the body, but the healing of the soul, the forgiveness that is the most powerful medicine that exists, because there is no illness of the body that is not eased when the soul is at peace, and no peace of the soul that does not find its reflection in the rest of the body. Tonight that blood is still alive. Tonight those hands are still extended. And tonight You are within reach of that mercy which knows no limits of time or space, which crosses the centuries the way light crosses darkness, without effort, without sound, simply being what it is. Hands upon your weariness, a prayer of healing and farewell. And now, after having walked together through the streets of Nicomedia, after having come to know the child who lost his mother and the young man who found his God, after having watched the hands of Panteleimon rest upon the blind and the paralyzed and the imprisoned and the forgotten, I want to ask something of you. I want you to make this story your own, not to leave it as a distant account from a distant century, but to bring it here, to your bed, to your body, to this night, which is the only night that matters, because it is the night in which you are alive, in which you are present, in which you can still receive what God wishes to give you. But before we begin this last part of the journey together, I want you to do something. I want you to take a breath, not a quick breath, not the shallow kind you have been taking all day without noticing, the kind that barely reaches the top of your lungs before it turns around and leaves again. I want you to take a real breath, a slow breath that begins somewhere low in your body, that fills you from the inside, the way water fills a vessel, rising from the bottom up, expanding your belly first, then your ribs, then your chest, until there is no more room for air and you are completely, perfectly full. Hold it there for just a moment, and then let it go. Let it all go, every bit of it. And notice how, at the end of that breath, there is a half-second of absolute stillness, a pause between the exhale and the next inhale where nothing is happening, where you are neither giving nor receiving, where you simply exist, suspended and weightless, like a leaf that has just left the branch and has not yet begun to fall. That half-second is where we are going tonight. That is the place this chapter is designed to take you. And we will get there together, slowly, one breath at a time. I want you to imagine something. You do not need to try hard. Simply let it come, the way a good dream comes when you finally release your resistance and allow it in. Imagine that the room where you are begins to fill with a very soft light, very faint, like the light of a candle someone has lit far away, but whose warmth reaches you all the same, with the tenderness of something that does not burn but shelters. It is a golden light, ancient, the kind of light that has no source you can point to, the kind that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, the way dawn light fills a room before the sun has even fully risen, gently, gradually, without announcing itself. It is the same light that illuminated the hiding place of Hermolaus when he spoke of Christ to a young physician who had forgotten how to pray. It is the same light that filled the eyes of the blind man of Nicomedia in the first instant he could see. It is the light of grace, and it is here, in your room, in this moment, as real as the darkness it is gently, tenderly displacing. And in that light, standing beside your bed, is a figure. You do not need to see it clearly. You do not need to make out the features or the clothing or the hands. You do not need your imagination to produce a perfect picture, because this is not about seeing, but about feeling. And what you feel, even before you are fully aware of it, is warmth. A warmth that has nothing to do with the temperature of the room. A warmth that comes from presence, from nearness, from the particular quality of attention that belongs only to those who have truly learned how to love. It is the presence of someone who sees you completely, who sees your tired body and your restless mind and your heart that has been carrying more than it should, and who is not overwhelmed by any of it, who is not impatient with any of it, who looks at all of it and simply quietly chooses to stay. It is Panteleimon. It is the healer of souls, and he has come tonight, crossing 17 centuries of history, to do with you what he did with every sick person in Nicomedia, to stand beside you, without hurry, without conditions, without asking you for anything, and to offer you his healing hands. Take another breath. Let your body sink a little deeper. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to do. There is only this. Imagine those hands drawing near to your head, to your forehead, that expanse of skin above your eyes where the day leaves its mark more than anywhere else, where the furrows of concentration gather. where the frown you didn't know you were making has been slowly carving itself all day long. Your forehead, where the thoughts that will not let you rest accumulate like clouds that have forgotten how to move. Tomorrow's worries pressing up against yesterday's regrets. The unfinished conversations replaying themselves without resolution. The lists of things to be done that circle and circle and circle, like birds looking for a place to land and finding none. All of that lives in your forehead. All of that has been pressing there, quietly and persistently, for longer than you realize. Feel how those hands rest upon your forehead with an infinite gentleness, so light you might almost wonder if they are there at all, and yet unmistakably present, the way moonlight is present on your skin on a clear night. Subtle, cool, and somehow deeply reassuring. As though they were made of breath and prayer. As though the very act of touching you were itself a form of intercession. A wordless petition on your behalf, addressed to the God who already knows everything you need before you ask. And how, at that touch, the thoughts begin to grow quiet. Not silenced by force, not pressed down or pushed away, because that never works. Because the thoughts that are pushed away simply return louder. But quieted the way a river is quieted when it reaches the sea. Not stopped, but absorbed into something so much larger that its own turbulence becomes irrelevant. The worries are still there, but they are far away now, like sounds heard through a thick wall, present, but without power. The lists are still there, but they no longer feel urgent, because something more urgent has taken their place. The simple, wordless fact of being here, being held, being tended to. Panteleimon knows the thoughts that torment in the night. He too lay awake in those final days in Nicomedia, carrying the weight of what was coming. He too stared into the darkness and felt the fear of what the morning might bring. And he found, in those hours, that the only answer to the darkness was not to fight it, but to fill it with prayer, with surrender, with the slow and stubborn practice of trusting that the one who holds the stars also holds the hours of the night. That same trust is what now rests upon your forehead, like a kiss so gentle you almost did not feel it. You are not alone. You have never been alone, not in this night, and not in any night before it. Let your forehead soften now. Let the muscles there release. The ones you didn't know were clenched, the ones that have been braced against the day since morning. Feel the skin of your forehead smooth and settle, the way the surface of water smooths after the last ripple has reached the shore and dissolved. Your forehead is at rest, your thoughts are at rest, and the golden light in the room grows very slightly warmer, as though it too has noticed something being released and is quietly, gratefully filling the space left behind. Now those hands descend to your eyes. To your eyes. Those extraordinary instruments that have worked so hard today, that have taken in so much. Think of everything your eyes have done since the moment you opened them this morning. The screens they have moved across, the faces they have read, for signs of what the other person was really feeling. The small print they have strained to make out, the news they have absorbed without your permission, the darkness they have searched during the long minutes of wakefulness when sleep refused to come, looking for something to fix on, something steady, something that would not spin. Your eyes are tired in a way that is different from the tiredness of the rest of your body, a kind of tiredness that has a texture to it, a rawness, as though they have been asked to hold open slightly longer than they wanted to. You know that feeling, that slight ache behind the eyes, that heaviness in the eyelids that is the body's gentlest and most persistent request. Feel how the fingers of the Holy Physician rest upon your eyelids now, not pressing, not covering, but simply present, the way a mother's hand rests on a child's eyes when the child is overtired and cannot find the way to sleep on their own. A touch so kind it is almost an apology. An apology on behalf of the world for everything it showed you today that you did not need to see, for every image that lodged itself somewhere behind your eyes and refused to let go, for every face carrying pain that you looked at and felt helpless before, for every piece of news that arrived like a stone dropped into still water and sent ripples through the rest of your day. Panteleimon rests his hands upon your eyes with the authority of one who gave sight back to those who had none, and in doing so established a permanent and tender relationship with the miracle of seeing. He knows what eyes are for. He knows that they were made not only to take in but to rest, not only to witness but to close, and that the closing of eyes in trust is not defeat but wisdom, not blindness but a different and deeper kind of sight. The sight that comes when the outer world goes dark and the inner world, the only world that is truly ours, begins to become visible. Feel your eyelids grow heavy now. Let them fall. There is nothing left to see tonight. There is nothing out there that cannot wait until morning. Behind those closed eyes, you are safe. You are held. You are seen by the one whose seeing does not require your eyes to be open. The hands move now to your jaw and your mouth, places where we hold so much that we never say. The words that gathered in your throat today and were swallowed back down because the moment was not right, or because you were afraid of how they would land, or because you have learned over the years that some things are safer kept inside. The jaw that has been clenched imperceptibly since sometime in the middle of the afternoon, tightening with each small frustration, each moment of impatience, each time something did not go the way you needed it to go, and you responded by pressing your back teeth together and pressing on. Your jaw does not know it is clenched. It has been that way for so long that the clenching has become its resting position, its default, its idea of normal. But it is not normal. It is a record of the day, written in muscle and tension, and Panteleimon reads it the way a physician reads a body, not with judgment but with understanding, with the quiet recognition of someone who has seen this before, who has touched 1,000 jaws like yours and known without being told what kind of day it has been. Feel his hands rest lightly on either side of your face. Feel the warmth that radiates from them, reaching into the joint of your jaw, into the muscles of your cheeks, into the soft tissue at the back of your mouth. And let your jaw drop, just slightly, just enough. Let your teeth part a little. Let your tongue settle softly at the bottom of your mouth. Let the back of your throat open like a door that has been pressed shut all day and is finally, gratefully, allowed to swing free. Your mouth does not have to hold anything tonight. It does not have to form words or explanations or apologies. It does not have to smile for anyone. It does not have to be brave or articulate or composed. It can simply rest, softly open, breathing, at peace. Now those hands descend to your neck, to that corridor between your head and your body, where everything passes, where so much accumulates. Your neck, which holds up your head with its endless weight of thoughts. Your neck, where the tension lives that speaks most honestly about the life you are living. The tightness that says you have been bracing. The stiffness that says you have been guarded. The ache that says you have been carrying something invisible for a long time, and your body has been quietly, faithfully, exhaustingly compensated. There is a place at the base of your skull, right where your neck meets your head, where some people carry their entire lives in concentrated form. A knot of tension so habitual they have stopped feeling it. The way you stop hearing a sound that has always been there. Perhaps you have that place. Perhaps you know exactly what I'm describing, because you can feel it right now that attention has been drawn to it. That persistent, dull, quietly demanding presence that has been your companion for weeks, for months, perhaps for years. Panteleimon knows about necks. He knows about the weight that accumulates there. He who was bound to an olive tree by his neck, who felt the edge of a sword press against that same vulnerable corridor, knows in a way no one else can what it is to surrender the neck, to open it, to make it vulnerable, to stop protecting it, and simply allow what must happen to happen. And in his surrender there was no defeat. In his surrender there was the most radical possible form of trust. The trust that says, I cannot hold my own life, and I no longer wish to. I place it in hands that are not mine. And at that moment of surrender, the sword bent. The sword bent, because you cannot cut through something that has already been given away. Panteleimon's hands rest upon your neck now, warm, certain, unhurried. And they carry within them the memory of that surrender, the gift of it, the extraordinary lightness of it. Feel your neck begin to yield. Feel the muscles there soften one by one, like knots loosening in slow motion, like ice releasing its grip on a riverbank when spring finally arrives, and there is no more use in holding on. Feel your head grow lighter, as though a burden has been quietly, invisibly removed. A burden so familiar you had stopped noticing it, and whose absence now feels like a small miracle, like suddenly being able to breathe in a room where the air was too thick. Now your shoulders. Let us stay here for a moment, because your shoulders need this. Your shoulders have been carrying the world, and they deserve more than a passing acknowledgement. Think of everything your shoulders hold. Think of the work they carry, the deadlines, the obligations, the responsibilities that arrive each morning before you have even opened your eyes, already waiting, already pressing. Think of the family they hold, the worries about the people you love, the children if you have them, the parents who are aging, the friendships that need tending, the relationships that have grown complicated and that you carry around with you everywhere you go, like stones in your... Think of the future they brace against, the uncertainty of it, the uncontrollability of it, the 1,000 ways things could go wrong, that your mind rehearses at 2 a.m. with a thoroughness that exhausts you, even in the imagining. All of that lives in your shoulders. All of that has made a home there. And your shoulders, loyal and uncomplaining, have accepted every new tenant without protest, without limit, without ever saying, "This is too much. I cannot hold any more." But tonight they can put it down. Tonight they are permitted to put it all down. Feel the hands of Panteleimon resting upon your shoulders, one hand on each, warm and steady, with the weight of real presence, the weight of someone who is genuinely, completely there, not distracted, not elsewhere, not thinking about what comes next. Simply here, with you, attending to exactly this, to the muscles beneath his palms, to the knots and the tightness and the years of accumulated holding. Feel the warmth from his hands seeping downward, the way warmth always moves, from the surface inward, slowly, patiently, not forcing but persuading, the way sunlight persuades cold ground on the first warm day of spring. And beneath that warmth, feel something begin to give way, not all at once, not dramatically, slowly, like a fist unclenching finger by finger, like a breath releasing by degrees, first a slight easing, then a little more, then the sudden startling recognition of how much you were holding, and the extraordinary relief of no longer holding it. Your shoulders drop. They drop in a way that surprises you because you did not know they were so high. They drop and keep dropping, finding a new level, a truer level, a level that was there all along beneath all the guarding and the bracing and the holding, the level where they were always meant to be. And from this new, lower, softer place, they look back at everything they were carrying and they understand something. The weight was real, but it was never theirs to carry alone. It was never meant to be. There were always hands beneath them, holding what they could not hold. Invisible hands, patient hands, the hands of one who said, "Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And who meant it? Who means it still? Who means it for you, tonight, in this room, in this body, in this moment of finally letting go? Breathe. Just breathe. Let the breath come all the way in and all the way out. There is nothing to do but this. The hands rest now upon your chest, upon the center of your chest, where the heart lives its constant, faithful, unremarked life, beating without being asked, giving without being thanked, sustaining you through every moment you have ever lived without a single complaint, without a single day off, without ever demanding recognition for the extraordinary work it does simply by being what it is. Your heart deserves your gratitude tonight. Your heart, which has been broken and mended and broken again and mended again and has kept going through all of it, through every loss and every disappointment and every long night that seemed to have no morning. Your heart deserves to be honored. And Panteleimon honors it now placing his hands upon it with the reverence of a physician who knows he is touching the most important organ in the body. Not because of what it pumps, but because of what it holds. Because your chest holds so much that has never been spoken. The grief that arrived and was never given enough time. The loneliness that you smile through during the day and that waits for you faithfully in the dark. The love you feel for people and cannot always find the words to express. The fear that hides behind competence and capability and the appearance of having everything under control. The tenderness that the world sometimes does not feel safe enough to receive. All of it is there in your chest, compressed and layered and carefully guarded. And Panteleimon does not ask you to explain any of it, does not ask you to name it or sort it or resolve it. He simply places his hands upon it and holds it with you, the way you hold something precious and fragile, the way you hold a bird that has flown into a window and is stunned and needs a moment of warmth and stillness before it remembers how to fly. Feel your chest rise and fall beneath those hands. Feel the breath moving through it. In and out, each cycle slightly slower than the last. Each exhale releasing a little more of the compression, a little more of the guarding, a little more of the careful, exhausting work of keeping everything contained. You do not have to contain it tonight. You do not have to be held together. You're allowed to be exactly as unfinished and uncertain and tender as you actually are. Panteleimon has seen it all before, has seen the inside of suffering in ways that most people never will, has pressed his hands to wounds that the world declared hopeless, and remained steady, remained present, remained full of a love that did not flinch and did not turn away. His hands on your chest say what his lips do not need to say. I know, I see you. This is safe. You are safe. Let something in your chest release now, not with effort, but with permission. Not with force, but with the slow, sweet yielding of something that has been held long enough and knows it is finally, truly allowed to rest. Now the hands move to your arms that have been reaching all day, reaching for things, reaching toward people, reaching to catch what was falling and push back what was pressing and hold together what was coming apart. Your arms that have been the instruments of your giving, your working, your caring, your trying. Feel the warmth of Panteleimon's touch moving along them now. From your shoulders, down through your upper arms, across your elbows, down through your forearms, reaching all the way to your wrists, to your hands, to the very tips of your fingers. Feel the muscles there unclench. Feel the tendons soften. Feel the hands that have been doing and doing and doing finally simply open. Palms upward, fingers loose, no longer grasping, no longer braced, no longer prepared to catch or carry or push. Open hands, receptive hands. The hands of someone who has, for this one night, put down everything they were holding and is willing, simply willing, to receive. There is a posture in prayer, ancient, found across many traditions, of holding the hands open and facing upward. It is not a posture of emptiness, but of readiness, not passivity, but availability. It says, I am here. I am not clutching. I am not controlling. I am open to what comes. Feel your hands in that posture now, lying open at your sides or resting on your belly, soft and unclenched, and feel what it is like to be on the receiving end for once, to be the patient rather than the caregiver, to be the one being tended to rather than the one doing the tending. This is allowed. This is good. This is, in fact, exactly what you need. The hands descend now to your abdomen, that center of the body, the place of breath and digestion, and the deep nervous system that governs so much more than we give it credit for. Your belly, where anxiety lives when it has settled in for a long stay, where the knot forms when you are worried about something you cannot solve. That particular tight, twisting sensation low in the stomach that is the body's way of saying, I am not sure we are safe. I am not sure we are okay. Something is not right, and I cannot stop monitoring it. Perhaps that knot is there right now. Perhaps it has been there so long you have begun to think of it as simply a part of you, an organ you were born with, a permanent feature of your interior landscape. It is not. It is a response. A faithful, well-intentioned, but exhausted response from a nervous system that has been on alert for too long and does not know how to stop. Feel Panteleimon's hands resting on your abdomen now. Feel the warmth reaching into that deep, tight place, not breaking anything, not forcing anything, but simply offering heat and stillness, and the message that the body most needs to hear when it has been on guard too long. You can stand down now. The watch is over. Someone else has taken the night shift, and it is not you. And you can let the alarm go quiet. You can let the monitoring cease. You can let your belly soften and spread and breathe the way it was designed to breathe, freely, fully, without restriction. Feel it now. That softening. That slow release of the knot, unwinding by degrees, each breath loosening it a little more, the way a hand loosens a clenched rope by opening, by releasing, by simply choosing not to grip. Your belly is soft. Your belly is warm. Your belly is at peace. And your breath, freed from the constraint of that knot, reaches deeper than it has reached all day, all the way down into the lowest part of your lungs, filling spaces that have been unused since this morning, delivering oxygen to parts of your body that have been quietly waiting for it, nourishing you from the inside in a way you can almost feel. The way you can almost feel yourself becoming calmer, heavier in the good way, on the way of rest and not of burden, sinking deeper and deeper into the surface beneath you, as though gravity itself has become an act of grace. Now, the hands move to your lower back, to that place that holds so much, physically and otherwise. Your lower back, which carries the structural weight of your entire upper body, which is the hinge between above and below, which is asked to bend and lift and twist and support, and never quite given the acknowledgement it deserves for the extraordinary work it does. If you carry stress in your body, and you do, we all do, it is here that it often settles most stubbornly, most physically, most undeniably. The ache that begins as tension and becomes a conversation your body insists on having, whether you want to or not. The stiffness that greets you in the morning before you have done anything to deserve it. The residue of the previous day's holding, laid down overnight, like sediment. Panteleimon places his hands on your lower back with the steady, knowing pressure of a physician who understands the body's architecture, who knows that this place is not merely physical but memorial, that it holds not just today's tension, but accumulated tension, layered tension, the tension of days and weeks and perhaps years of carrying too much with too little support. Feel the warmth there. Feel it spreading across the width of your lower back, reaching into the muscles on either side of your spine, seeping into the deep tissue that rarely gets touched, rarely gets attention, rarely receives the signal that it can, at last, release. Feel those muscles softening, slowly, because deep tissue does not rush, does not yield to impatience, yields only to persistence and warmth and the patient accumulation of ease. But it is yielding now. You can feel it, that deep ache becoming a deep warmth, that tension becoming simply sensation, that bracing becoming the thing that comes before release, the last grip of a hand before it finally, completely opens. And then the hands move down to your legs, down through your hips, which have been holding your weight all day, which are the cradle of the body, and carry in them a kind of tiredness that is older and deeper than one day's fatigue. Down through your thighs, the largest muscles in your body, the ones that have done the most work, the ones that have pushed you forward through every moment you wanted to stop and didn't, every hill you climbed when you were already tired, every step you took when you were running on something other than energy, running on will, running on love, running on the stubborn refusal of a good person to give up on the day. Your thighs deserve rest. They deserve this. Feel the warmth moving through them now, dissolving the fatigue the way salt dissolves in warm water, not quickly, not violently, but completely, until there is nothing left but the warmth itself. Down through your knees, those complex and faithful joints that bend without complaint 10,000 times a day, that absorb the impact of every step you take, that carry you upstairs and down, over thresholds and across distances, and that sometimes ache in ways you have learned to work around rather than address. Feel the warmth in your knees. Feel the tenderness of a saint who healed the paralyzed, attending to these joints that have asked for nothing and been given little, bathing them in warmth and ease, honoring them simply for what they are, the mechanism by which you move through the world, the quiet structure beneath every journey you have ever taken, down through your calves, where the fatigue of standing and walking pools like water at the end of the day, down through your ankles, those narrow corridors between leg and foot, precise and delicate, holding your balance with a subtlety you never think to appreciate until something goes wrong, down to your feet that have carried you every single day of your life without a single complaint, that have pressed against the cold floor in the morning before the day was ready to begin, that have stood in lines and walked through corridors and run after children and found their way home in the dark. Your feet, which are the part of your body most literally connected to the earth, most literally grounded, most literally in contact with the world that holds you up, even when you forget to notice. Panteleimon rests his hands on the soles of your feet, and it is perhaps here, at this most humble point of contact, that the miracle of this moment is most fully felt, because there is something about being tended to at the feet that touches something deep in the soul, something that remembers other hands, other stories, another night long ago when the greatest of all physicians knelt and washed the feet of those he loved, to show them the nature of a love that serves, that does not stand above but comes down, that does not wait to be approached but goes to where the need is. Panteleimon learned from that love, he lived that love, and tonight he enacts it again, here, at your feet, at the most grounded and human and tired part of you, sending warmth through your soles and into your arches and around your heels and to the tips of each toe. A warmth so complete and so generous that you feel it not just in your feet, but everywhere, as though the whole body were connected to this point of contact, as though healing introduced at the base travels upward through everything. Your whole body is at rest now, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet. The warmth of Panteleimon's passing hands has moved through every part of you, not missing anything, not overlooking the small places, or the neglected places, or the places you have learned to hide even from yourself. Every part of you has been seen, every part of you has been touched, every part of you has received the wordless message that it is known, that it matters, that it is held within a compassion so vast and so ancient that 17 centuries have not diminished it by a single degree. Your breathing now is slow. It is the slowest it has been since you woke this morning. Each breath arrives a little later than the last, and each is a little deeper, a little more complete, a little more satisfying in the way that only truly restful breathing can be. The kind of breathing that is not effortful but effortless, not controlled but surrendered. The breathing of someone who has, finally, stopped holding on and allowed the body to do what the body, left to its own wisdom, always knows how to do. Your muscles are loose. You can feel the difference even now between the body you had an hour ago, the one that was braced and clenched and vigilant, and this body, this softer body, this body that has been tended to and is now tender, yielding, trusting, resting on the surface beneath it with the full weight of everything it is, keeping nothing back, holding nothing up. Your mind is quiet, not empty. The mind is never truly empty, and that is fine, that is human. But quiet in the way of a library after closing time, where all the books are still there, all the knowledge and the worry and the memory and the planning still exist on their shelves, but nothing is being actively pulled down and opened and read in the harsh light of anxiety. Everything can wait until morning. Everything will still be there in the morning. And morning, when it comes, will bring with it what morning always brings: new light, new grace, new mercy, the perpetual gift of another beginning. But that is morning. This is night. And night has its own gift, its own grace, its own form of mercy. And it is this: rest. Simple, complete, unconditional rest. And in this stillness, In this silence that is no longer the silence of loneliness, but the silence of company, the silence of two presences in a room where words are no longer needed, I want to leave you with something to carry into your sleep. Not a thought, because thoughts are too heavy for where you are going. Not an instruction, because you are done following instructions for the day. Something lighter than that. Something that will not weigh anything at all. That will simply be there when you need it. Like a hand in the dark that you reach for and find without having to look. Imagine that Panteleimon, before withdrawing, before returning to that golden light from which he came. That light which is already, you notice, beginning to soften at the edges, beginning to move with the slow, unhurried certainty of something that belongs everywhere and is in no rush to be anywhere in particular, leans close to you. He does not startle you. He moves the way kindness moves, which is without announcement, without drama, present before you realize it has arrived. He leans close, and he whispers something. Not with human words, not in any language that could be written down or repeated later, but in the language that the soul recognizes before the mind has time to translate it. The language that bypasses every guard and every defense and every carefully constructed version of yourself and reaches, without effort, the part of you that is oldest and truest and most in need. And what he says is this. He says that your body is good, that it has always been good, that every scar it carries and every ache it holds, and every way it has changed from what it once was, are not signs of failure, but of life, of a life that has been lived, that has pressed against the world and been pressed back, that has loved and worked and grieved and continued, and that continues still, even tonight, even now, faithful beyond all reasonable expectation. Your body is not a problem to be solved, or a project to be improved. Your body is a temple, and it is holy, and it is home, and it deserves to be treated with the same reverence that Panteleimon brought to every body he ever touched. He says that your weariness is real, that it is not weakness, that the tiredness you feel, in your muscles and in your eyes and in the deep, unnamed place somewhere inside you that is more tired than any of those, is the honest record of a life lived in earnest, a life that has not cheated, that has shown up even when it did not feel like showing up, that has tried even when trying was the hardest thing, that weariness is not a burden, it is evidence, it is proof of love and effort and the daily unsung heroism of ordinary human life. He says that your pain has been seen. Every pain, the kind that shows up on scans and the kind that doesn't, the kind you can name and the kind you have never found words for, the pain in your body and the pain in your history, and the pain that arrives without explanation in the middle of the night and sits beside you until morning. Every bit of it has been seen, not from a distance, not with detachment, but up close, with the eyes of someone who spent his entire life pressing his hands to exactly this kind of pain, and never, not once, looked away. He says that you are not alone, that you have never been alone, that the nights when it felt most like you were, when the darkness was thickest and the silence was most complete and the distance between you and any living soul felt infinite and uncrossable, those were not nights of abandonment, but of a presence so quiet and so deep that the noise of the day had to completely cease before it could be felt, like a heartbeat that you cannot hear when the music is playing, but that is there, has always been there, steady and faithful and absolutely certain, the moment the room goes quiet enough to listen. He tells you that you do not have to be strong tomorrow, that tomorrow is not your responsibility, that tomorrow will arrive with its own grace, its own small and sufficient portion of mercy, calibrated exactly to what tomorrow needs and not a drop more, because grace does not arrive in advance, does not accumulate in reserve, but comes fresh each morning like the dew, like the manna in the wilderness, exactly enough for the day, always exactly enough. So you do not need to carry tomorrow's grace tonight. You do not need to prepare for it or brace for it or worry about whether it will be enough. It will be enough. It has always been enough. Let tomorrow be tomorrow's. Let tonight be only tonight's. And let tonight's only task, the single, simple, merciful task assigned to you for these dark and quiet hours, be this: sleep. He tells you finally, and this is the last thing, the thing that will stay with you as you cross the threshold between waking and dreaming, as the story and the voice and the golden light all begin to soften and blur and blend into the deeper, wordless story that sleep tells. He tells you that the blood that liquefies each 27th of July in Ravello and in Madrid is a sign meant for you, personally, specifically, as though your name were written on the vial, a sign that what appears dry can flow again, that what appears finished can resume, that what appears lost beyond recovery can be given back in a moment, in an instant, by a power that does not explain itself and does not ask permission, and does not require that you have done anything to deserve it. Only that you are here, only that you are open, only that you have, in your own imperfect and exhausted and completely sufficient way, shown up. Your health, if it has been taken from you, it can be restored. Your peace, if you have forgotten what it feels like, it can return. Your joy, if it has gone underground during these long and difficult months, it has not gone far. Your faith, if it has grown thin and threadbare from too much time in the cold, it can thicken again, the way faith always thickens when it is given a story to live inside, a saint to walk beside, a voice that speaks to it in the dark without judgment, without demand, with nothing but the oldest and most inexhaustible of offerings, presence and love, and the quiet insistence that you matter, that you are known, that you are held, that you are not now and have never been and will never be. These things do not end. They cannot end. They cannot end, because the God who imagined you into being and who has been watching over your becoming since before you had words for any of it does not grow weary, does not lose interest, does not look away, does not stop. He is the physician whose practice has no closing time, whose waiting room is always open, who makes house calls at midnight and at 3 in the morning and at every hour when the darkness is worst and the need is most acute. And Panteleimon is his instrument tonight, his hands, his presence, his 17 centuries of accumulated compassion flowing toward you through the darkness of this room as naturally and inevitably as water flows downhill, as light fills whatever space is open to receive it. You are open now. You are receiving now. Let it come. Rest now. Sleep now. Let the story end here, in this place of warmth and stillness and heldness, and let the next story, the one your body will tell in the language of repair and restoration and renewal, the story your cells will write in the silence of sleep, begin. It is a good story. It is a necessary story, and it needs you to be unconscious to be told, which means that the most important thing you can do right now, for yourself and for everyone who needs you, and for the God who made you and loves you without condition, is to close your eyes and stop trying and simply, completely, trustingly sleep. Sleep the way the child slept in the arms of Panteleimon on the dusty street of Nicomedia, newly returned from somewhere the living do not go, warm and safe and entirely unafraid, held by hands that had just done the impossible and were now simply, quietly, holding. Sleep the way Panteleimon slept in the boat of his own faith during the storm of his martyrdom. Not because the storm was not real, not because the danger was not real, but because he had found the place in the center of himself where the storm could not reach, the place where God lives, the place where peace is not a feeling that depends on circumstances, but a presence that endures through all of them. Sleep your way into that place tonight. Let the story carry you. Let the voice that has been with you through these chapters, through the streets of Nicomedia and the corridors of the palace and the shadows of Hermolaus's hiding place and the dusty road where a child came back to life, let that voice now grow quieter and quieter still until it is no louder than a breath, and then no louder than a thought, and then no louder than the silence itself, which is not empty, but full of everything that has been said and given and received tonight, full of the mercy of a saint and the love of a God who never stops healing, who is healing you even now, even as you drift, even as the words begin to lose their edges and the golden light begins to dim to the softer dark of sleep. You are safe, you are held, you are loved. Go to sleep now. This has been Saints for Sleep. Close your eyes, surrender your burdens, and rest in His peace. Amen. Return soon for more stories that heal the soul.